How Mitakuyepi. Today is the 31st of October, and in a lot of places in this world, it's Halloween. In the Lakota tradition, we don't have anything like that. But as I said in one of my videos earlier this month, I said I would tell some stories and that could fit into that Halloween theme. And I shared some videos with you during this month with the Elkman and the double-faced woman and so I thought I would share one more since this is the night of Halloween, and this one has to do with deer women. Now, deer women are black-tailed deer that turn into women. And usually they appear to men, like they can scan a man and they can scan his thoughts, and from those thoughts they can transform into someone who he would really be attracted to physically. And then they come to that man, and it gets kind of scary. Yeah, it's kind of interesting and scary at the same time. These deer women, they don't talk Lakota or any language but their own, because they're originally black-tailed deer. So, but they have this ability to transform into these really pretty women. And the stories of these deer women exist in many tribes. But I will give you the Lakota flavor. Chima Lakota Chaheche, because I am Lakota. That's the reason. You can visit almost any Lakota family, and they will have a story about the deer women that happened maybe many, many years ago, or even recently too. I've heard some really interesting stories in my life. When they come to you, they enchant you or try to enchant you. And if you are living in an unhealthy way, or if you're living in denial or emotionally unbalanced, they will appear to you, and you have a greater tendency to fall victim to them. But if you are taking care of yourself as best as you can in all four parts of yourself, that's physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, then when you see one, you'll be able to recognize it, because you'll know certain signs that this is a deer woman. For one thing, like I said, they don't speak human languages. They look right through you. They're looking at you, but it's like right through you. And they're just facing you. Yeah, and their arms, they don't move. Their arms are always down. And if they're walking or running, it's just their legs, yeah, that are really moving. And for example, in this one story, I know of a guy who was a bus driver on the reservation, and he was busing kids out in the country from the school to their home. And he dumped everybody off, and it was about autumn time, and he was allowed to drive his bus home, because early in the morning he has to wake up and pick up those kids again, take them to school. So he dumped everybody off, and he made his last stop, and he started to go home. The roads were gravel, and all of a sudden he looked in the mirror and he saw something behind him, yeah, on the road. And he was watching it, and it was getting close really fast. As the closer it got, it looked like a person. And he was like, how could this be? You know, he's cruising kind of fast, and yet this person is catching up to him. And when it caught up to him, he looked to the side, you know, where the bus door is, and he saw this woman standing there. She was just looking straight ahead, and her arms were completely just straight down. but her legs were really moving up really fast. And he knew what that was. So boy, he just floored it, yeah. They drove that bus swinging, swerving down the road because it's a gravel road, but he wanted to get into the next town right away. He really came, there's a hill that comes into this town, but just before he came over the hill, he glanced because he saw that it wasn't there anymore. So he looked in the mirror, and then he saw this woman going towards the field, and there's a fence there, and she just jumped that fence, yeah, and her arms straight down, and she jumped that fence really high. And when she landed, she continued to run like that, and he didn't want to see anything more. And so he really got even more scared and really drove over this hill to get into town. And right away, he drove to a medicine man, and he told him what he saw. So he said, "Oh man, you looked at it, so there's an energy that went inside you." So he had to immediately go to Inipi, the sweat lodge ceremony. And when he did that, he vomited, and some yellow substance came out. See, this is from the energy of these creatures. And he was really weak after that. And usually when this happens, you begin to lose confidence in yourself. Whatever you're talented in, suddenly you have no ambition for that, to do those things, whatever your talent is, and you like fall into a depression. And so usually in these situations, you have to go to Inipi 4 times, yeah, in 4 days. And after that, you're coming back. But he didn't look it in the eyes, yeah? So that was a good thing, because if you look it in the eyes, the damage is more long-lasting. And so he was able to eventually, get all of that out of his system, and he was back to normal. And when he did that bus route, he took a lot of sage with him and so forth, because he was prepared. But it never happened to him again. See, that's one example. Another example is these 2 guys. They lived in a house south of town. This is on the reservation. And they decided they were going to come into town and go to the bar and get some drinks. So they got in their car and they started to drive to town. Well, it was about a half-hour drive. And again, dirt road, yeah? And so they were driving, and maybe after 5 minutes, the sun was going down, it's summertime, and it was getting dark out there, and suddenly they saw 2 women walking on the highway. They were carrying bags. They're really big bags. They had really long dresses and these really tall hats, kind of like the Victorian age. And they thought, geez, that's weird. This happened like in the 1960s or 70s. And so they stopped because they were concerned, that something might happen to them. So they stopped, and the guy in the passenger, he rolled down the window and he said, "You guys need a ride?" And they stopped, yeah. These 2 women were just standing there like that, arms down, holding their bags. They just stood there. So this one guy said, "Well, what should we do?" So they said, "Well, let's open the doors and see if they get in. If they get in, we'll take them to town. If they don't get in, then we'll just leave them out there." So they got outside and they opened the 2 back doors, because it's an old 4-door car. So at first these women were just standing there. One went around the other side of the car, and then they both got into the back seat at the same time. So these guys were saying, "Where are you guys from?" Because they're dressed really peculiar. So, "Where are you guys from?" And they didn't say anything. They said, "We can take you to the town and then drop you off, and then you can continue wherever you want to go." The women said nothing. Yeah, they were sitting back there just looking straight ahead, just like into the distance. And then suddenly, behind the men's car seat, there's women started to kick them. So they looked in the back and they were just sitting there like this, arms down, yeah, just looking straight ahead. But they're kicking, yeah, the legs were kicking the car seat really bad. And it's just noisy. So they looked at each other and they were like, oh no, it's our dear women. So they stopped the car and jumped out and then they opened those doors really quick and those women ran out of the car and they really were running fast. And again, there was a barbed wire fence there and both women just jumped over it like nothing. Yeah, like nothing. They still carrying their bags, arms straight down, but their legs were really moving. So they jumped over that fence, and as they landed on the other side, it was two black-tailed deer, and they just ran off into the distance. So these guys were really like, I don't think I want to drink tonight. Oh man, what an experience! That no farms, nothing out there. Yeah, just prairie. So they drove into town really fast to some relatives and they just they were drinking coffee and telling the people what happened and that was that. Yeah. And so gosh, that's scary. Yeah, to see that, to experience that. And then there was another one where this happened right around the beginning of the reservation when Indians were given these allotments of land and the government gave them a log cabin and some farming equipment and things like that. And America told them to be farmers. And they were just setting up like this. And there was this one couple, they had just got married. They were a young couple. And they were sorting their things out in their new log cabin. And it started to rain. And so suddenly they heard something at the door. So they opened the door and here there's a woman standing out there. She's dressed long time ago, yeah? The buckskin dress and quill work designs. And she was really a pretty woman. And then the man was asking her, who are you? Because, you know, everybody in the area is related to each other, but he didn't know this woman. And at that time, that would not be a peculiar sight because some people were still dressing like they were in the 1800s. So it wasn't peculiar to see a woman standing there in a buckskin dress. And she was just looking straight through the guy, yeah, just looking straight through him. And then so he silently said to his wife, sneak out the back window. Yeah, take out that window and sneak out the back. And she was like, are you crazy? I said, who is there? Welcome her in. And then the husband said, you don't want to know what this is. I said, sneak out and then I'm going to follow you. So she said, wow, okay. The way her husband's voice sounded, she was concerned too. So she went out the back window. And then he slowly went out too. And so as soon as they got out, they just ran. Yeah, there was a hill nearby with some trees. So they ran over there and he told her, climb up as high as you can. And so they did. And as they were sitting in the tree, they were looking at their cabin, they heard this screaming and all this crashing sounds coming from their log cabin. After that was done, suddenly a black-tailed deer just ran out of there. And that woman was shocked. Yeah, it's like, oh my goodness, that's a close call. So these are some examples of these women. And like I said, it's can be really dangerous if a man is not emotionally healthy, if he's not emotionally balanced. So it's very important that we live in a healthy way. Like I said, physically, mentally, spiritually, and especially emotionally, because in this world, that's what we're really weak in, is in the emotional department. So we do that, you know, by coming to peace within ourselves and like I said, taking care of ourselves so that we are creating something, and we're creating peace and we're creating intimacy, we're creating love. It all starts within. And That's based on the first Lakota Star Knowledge concept, which is reality begins within. So those are some stories I wanted to share with you on this Halloween. And so I ask that you please be careful out there, because there's trick-or-treaters. You don't want to run into anybody, and you don't want to run into any deer women either. Yeah, so be careful out there and have a good evening. And it was a pleasure to share these scary stories with you. And there's lots more. Yeah, there's a lot of stories that really could fit that Halloween theme. But it's not to frighten you, but it's to teach you that what can happen when you don't live in a healthy way. Because when you do live in a healthy way, you have power, yeah? Because that's what you're making. When you live in a healthy way, you're making power within yourself. It's in your communication, it's in the things that you do, how you do them, how you say them, how you receive, yeah? How you receive from others. Or if you look at something, you don't judge it. You really examine it and try to interpret it in a healthy way. That's living. And so when you live in that way, you encounter something like a deer woman, then you know how to handle it. Gosh, there's lots of stories. Maybe I'll continue with some of these stories, okay? November's coming, but I will continue with a few more stories, all right? Because it's really interesting and you can learn from that. So with that, I thank you for listening to this video. And as I said, I really enjoy sharing these information with you. And in our way, everything is based on a circle. So there's no end. Yeah, that's why we have no word for goodbye. So instead we say until next time, which is doksha ake. And wait a minute. Hey, we have Hu Noom here. He's coming to give us some wisdom. So, how Hu Noom, lila taya yahi yellow. Really happy that you have arrived here. I didn't even notice he was here the whole time. Lila pilama yellow Mitakuyepi. Doksha ake, and I will catch you in the next video. To learn more about Lakota spirituality, I have written a book called Wichocha Otechike. This book also includes Lakota Star Knowledge information. All the videos that I make, which are about Lakota spirituality, Lakota Star Knowledge, and cultural information, are based on this book. This book costs 99 American dollars. This price includes the shipping cost. And to learn more about Lakota language, I have written a Lakota language book called Chante Etanha Owoglake, Speaking from the Heart. And all my Lakota language videos are based on this book. This book costs 119 American dollars. This price includes the shipping cost. And new for 2024, I have a new book titled Chekia, which means pray. This book includes a CD which has traditional Lakota prayers and traditional spiritual songs. This book cost 57 American dollars, and this price includes the shipping cost. I also teach online, and I give spiritual consultations as well. If you are interested in any of my services and products, you can send payment via PayPal to my email address, which is info@wolakota7.com. You can see the email address on the screen, and it's also in the video description below. When you send your payment, please include your shipping address and your email address. I do have a Patreon account, and you can see the link to that in the description below the video. Here you can also make donations to my channel, and you can also buy my products, my books, and my services concerning private Lakota language lessons and spiritual consultation or spiritual instruction. Again, you can see the Patreon link in the video description below. Ho, lila pilamaelo. Thank you very much.
Starving and freezing. You held out your hands to